As the world struggles to comprehend the events of the last weekend, Bill O'Reilly calls out Bob Iger, the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, for the kind of messaging that's been on his channels ever since Disney and ABC joined forces. Let's talk about Joy Behar on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell from That Park Place, and this is Mr. VashSky. Vash, today we got to talk about something pretty heavy here. We're not going to go too deep in talking about the specific event because the situation in the United States right now is tense. Bill O'Reilly, though, brings up a good perspective. I say a good perspective. He asks a reasonable question that we need to bring up here. We need to consider objective truth in the world and whether or not we feed our minds with hate, where we're going to go with that. Obviously, Bill O'Reilly used to work with Fox News, but I think today he's talking about something that maybe Bob Iger needs to consider over his career with ABC.
How about ABC News? Their nightly news is responsible. Good Morning America, responsible. How about The View?
All right, he paused there, so I need to take this opportunity to point out that ABC is obviously a functioning brand within the Walt Disney Company, perhaps even Bob Iger's favorite brand within the Walt Disney Company, if not ESPN. And there's a long history here of Bob Iger kind of favoring those brands despite the fact that they, quote unquote, don't quite fit with the rest of Disney. They make money from a business standpoint. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But Bob Iger was an acquisition of Michael Eisner, for lack of a better way of putting that. Capital Cities, when it was purchased in 1990, Bob Iger came with that. ESPN and ABC came with that, and Bob Iger was the head of ABC, more of the television side of things in general, but he had some influence and some affinity for the news network. So this is probably the part of the company that Bob Iger has the most history with, putting the history of Walt's company pretty low on the list with the things that Bob is familiar with versus ABC News. He has a long history there. He understands that probably better than any aspect of the company. Vash, would you say that's a fair statement?
Oh, I would absolutely say it's a fair statement. He has definitely given disproportionate amounts of weight and importance and prioritization towards the ABC wing of the company. In fact, I believe when asked about linear assets being sold, he got a little cagey about that. He receded a little bit when it came to ABC specifically. And I think that's, not only bias on his part, obviously coming from that realm as well, as all great executives, I suppose, through acquisition, but also too just
very good.
Yeah, I mean, I think he likes the idea of the Bob Iger company being a media apparatus in that way that the ABC conveys.
Yeah, and I think that there's also a point to be made here is that Bob Iger is known as a great communicator, and I don't think he was prepared for the rise of social media and how much that was going to push against him here as he bought more and more and more. Bob Iger knows the power of a narrative because he came from ABC and in sports specifically within ABC here. So I think he understands everything that goes on at his channels. And let's continue on with this video as we have that in mind.
A lot of hate. And the chief cheerleader of that hate is Joy Behar. And she has been doing this for decades. And she gets a check every week from Disney, which is run by a man named Bob Iger. Okay? Iger is apparently okay with Joy Behar, who's been there forever. Hating. Am I wrong?
First of all, I'm going to say I don't think he's wrong. I want to thank the Twitter handle Doc Epcot, friend of the channel here. We're going to link him below for providing the clip from Bill O'Reilly. Joy Behar has been outspoken for a very long time on a show called The View. For those of you who aren't aware of The View is a panel show that's on ABC. It's a daytime show. Whoopi Goldberg is on there. Sunny Hostin is on there. Joy Behar is on there, and usually they have someone that would claim to be a conservative on there, generally someone that is acceptable to the people that are on the show. There's been a source of some drama watching that person conflict with everyone else on the panel, adds a little spice there. Obviously, Rosie O'Donnell, who in some way, obviously had some influence on Trump's election in a backhanded sort of way here. A lot of this rhetoric that comes out of The View is very specific and very openly hostile towards people that disagree with Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin. Obviously, Sunny Hostin has made comments as well, attributing a lot of the problems of the world on people of specific races that she doesn't favor or speak favorably of, some pushing of narratives that are based on the immutable characteristics of people. In my opinion, they've gone very hard in the paint against entire swaths of people. And Joy Behar will speak very openly about her disdain for people on the other side of the aisle, Donald Trump in particular. Now, how aware of The View do you think that Bob Iger is, Vash?
Oh, I'm sure he's very aware. It's one of their premier programs they have on the ABC network itself. Been on the air for, coming up in 2027, it will be on the air for 30 years. And I will say, Jonas, ever since Barbara Walters, I guess, stepped back from The View and Joy Behar took the driver's seat, let's say, of that program, it has become very political, especially, I would say, 2016 onwards. And I don't think there's any possible way that Bob Iger doesn't know how his network, and specifically that program, is covering these things. And I would say the culpability attached to what happened over the weekend's events, I think there is blame that can be placed there simply because of just the awful rhetoric that has been coming out of that network and program.
Now, I had thought about, as we talk about Bob Iger's stance on political takes, doing what I sometimes do, which is putting up a ridiculous premise and letting the words speak for themselves on how ridiculous that is. I had thought about putting up this next clip of Bob Iger discussing politics in the Walt Disney Company, talking about politics, and framing it as how he responded over the last little while. But no, this is in fact a clip of Bob Iger responding in January of 2021 in the events of that month. Let's bring that up here. This is a video that was found by Christopher Rufo. I say found, it was probably sent to him by someone within the Walt Disney Company that wanted to blow the whistle on them. But this is Bob Iger when he was executive chairman of the company, not the CEO of the company. Bob Chapek was the CEO of the company at the time. And this is where we understand how Bob Iger started treating politics within the company at the time.
Well, I mean, Bob has talked about this eloquently since he's become CEO. I'll say a couple of things about it. You know, we've tended to shy away from politics, and in doing so, I think we've shied away from talking about issues that aren't political at all, like the issues that we're talking about today. Because we believe in doing so, maybe it looks like we're taking a stand. Well, in that reality, we should be taking a stand.
All right. I'm going to stop right there for a moment. Vash, what have been the results of Disney, quote unquote, taking a stand over the last few years?
The stock price in the complete tank, and about 50% of the audience receding in a big way from the company and the company's products. I think that would be the two biggest things that have occurred from the decision to go not just cover these things that happen in the political arena or in on the world stage related to politics, but commenting the way they do and actually taking a stand as a company towards these certain issues, dividing their consumer base.
I would totally agree. It's basically destroyed the Disney brand altogether because of whatever Bob Iger views as the moral stance here. He's tacitly said that he disagrees with the moral stance of everyone else. Now, I think that he misunderstood, as the great communicator that he is, he misunderstood how the events of that month, I'm going to say that day, were perceived nationally, perhaps even globally here. Perhaps because Bob Iger is a little bit out of touch, maybe, just maybe. I'm going to say that Bob Iger here is probably a person that he is confident he has the best view of what everyone should be doing in the United States. And that was a wild misinterpretation. Trying to say that half of the country is, I'm going to put words in his mouth here, vile, or we'll say a basket of deplorables. That might be a good one to use in this particular case. And instead of being the 4-quadrant company that Walt Disney built, he has turned this into something that cannot help itself but be political. So when he says now, after his return to the company, that we're going to quiet the noise that Bob Chapek created, we want to go back to this statement by Bob Iger right here.
By the way, I take responsibility for this. I was CEO for 15 years. I managed the company's public-facing processes and how we were portraying ourselves. And I think that we have to be less cautious, as Bob, I think, was just alluding to, about such things and not be concerned.
Giving authorization. He is speaking to tens of thousands of people that work for the Walt Disney Company at this point who are clamoring to have the chains thrown off so that they can say what they want to say about whoever they want to say it about. Bob Iger authorized this. So when they say, when I jokingly ask, is Bob Iger aware of what Behar is saying? I'm saying that Bob Iger gave her permission to say everything that she has been saying. Vash, do you have anything you want to say before we wrap this up?
I think that's a perfect analysis on your part, Jonas. Obviously, there have been things that have transpired over the weekend that have been in part fomented by the rhetoric as provided by networks like ABC. I think it's undeniable. Bill O'Reilly said it at the top of his segment there. I think that's absolutely correct. Everybody, I mean, out to the celebrities, to the influencers, to the people in key positions that can speak to the American public or even to the world, you have a responsibility. And I think ever since 2016, that responsibility has been overshadowed by the personal opinions of the networks themselves, whatever the case may be. And that has to be, the temperature has to cool on all of that. And I think there was an understanding that took place after the events of this weekend saying, you know what, no more of this.
Right. I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And I think the best response here is an outspoken, firm stance to say what is right and what is wrong. We don't have to be angry about it, although I'm going to admit, pretty angry about it myself right now, working on that. Anyhow, I want to throw this to our commenters. If there's anything in here that might inspire you to write a comment, I don't know. This is one of our more bland topics that we have ever covered here on That Park Place. So obviously, there's probably nothing that you want to say in the comment section down below, but that option is open to you. Sometimes I go too far with the sarcasm, of course. Like this video if it's been helpful to you in any way. There's some risk of this not being boosted in the algorithm, I would say. And so liking this video might help in boosting it up. Of course, sharing it out helps even more. And of course, consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.